I'd like to mention a couple of things before I begin with this. And one is, you can see there's a sort of flat bit here, and then we go up the mountain, and then we come back down to the plain probably, and then we're on here again. And we're going to find when we get to the hermit that he's on top of a mountain. So I'm suggesting that you take all 22 major trumps and lay them out for yourself and just see what kind of formation you would come up with. Because I think it's interesting when we get to the Wheel of Fortune, because it's a wheel. What are we going to do when we get to the wheel? So that's one thing. Try laying out all 22 cards for yourself and see what you get. The second thing is that I started a blog a few days ago, and I'm hoping that it's going to be an area where we can go and have some kind of discussion back and forth, because I can make points, and then if you are interested you can leave a comment, and then I can deal with the comments ideally within the blog itself and see what happens with that, because it might be useful to share information or to have a bit of discussion back and forth. And it's going to be easier to do it in print than it is through video, I think. Okay, so I don't know about this. I'm feeling kind of overwhelmed, because if you look at the Lovers, maybe it's about a card that represents love and affection and harmony and so on. But also this is Adam standing in front of the tree of life, and this is Eve standing in front of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And if you're from the West, or you've been brought up with a Western take on religion, you're going to recognize Adam and Eve. And that's a whole huge, complicated story about all sorts of things. So I'm looking at the Lovers and thinking, this is really, the tarot really covers so much, and it's complicated and it's complex. However, let me go back a little bit. And so we've got the Emperor up here, who maybe teaches the Fool about power, or explains to him that you need to learn about power. Then he sends him off to meet the Hierophant, who perhaps teaches him about religion. And then I mentioned last time, we have two people here and we've got two people here. And we've got a kind of similarity between these two cards, because two pillars, two trees, a student, Adam and Eve, and between the pillars, here we've got a human being, whereas here we've got an angel, and we've got the symbol of the sun radiating beams of light and heat, life-giving energy, we could say, because flowers and plants need sunlight to prosper or to develop. And so maybe this is what, there's a contrast, because this is dark, we're inside, or else it's evening. And this is, darkness is not the same as light. So this can be, maybe the Hierophant shows the Fool how to get out of darkness. And darkness can represent a problem or a difficult situation, or some place, or some kind of situation where we don't really see clearly, because it's dark, we don't see clearly what to do or how to handle a situation. Whereas with the Lovers, we're outside, there's this, the bright light of the sun is shining down. It looks like as well we've got help, because this looks like some kind of angel looking down on the people, and that represents us. And so with the Lovers, if you need a break, if you need higher help, if you need an overview of the situation, you're going to get it with this particular card, because of the presence of the angel in the card. And just looking at this, I'm remembering and noticing Adam is looking at Eve, but Eve is looking at the angel. So is this telling us, when this card comes up, that the woman in the relationship has a different interest or a different concern than the man, because the woman is looking up at the angel, whereas upside down it can mean that Eve is looking at Adam, and Adam is the one who's looking up at the angel. So the man could be maybe trusted to be able to take an overview. So he's not so, or maybe you've got two people, one of them is really involved with the circumstances of the relationship, whereas the other person can take an overview, can see the long term. You know what I mean? So let's say somebody's sick, You can be all concerned that they're sick, but if you remember, time passes and people get better. And so it can be that one of the two people is concerned with what is right in their face at that moment, whereas the other person knows that things are going to get better over time anyway, so there's really no need to panic. You know what I mean? Or these two people can represent two sides of you. So you, within yourself, you know that in the long run things are going to get better, but at the same time you've got something facing you right now that is of concern. And so the Fool with this card can be learning to take, or maybe with this one, the Fool has to learn to travel his path and not be distracted by things, you know what I mean, on either side that are going to be left behind anyway as you travel on. And so because they're going to be left behind, they're not that important. You're not going to take them with you. And that reminds me of a story I read. It's two Buddhist monks were walking from point A to point B, and they came to a river, and there was this beautiful woman who wanted to be carried across the river. So one of the monks picked her up and carried her across, and the second monk followed. And then, like 3 days later, they were still walking, and the first monk said to the second one, "How could you do that? How could you carry that woman across the river when you know that we're not supposed to have anything to do with women?" And the second monk said, "Are you still carrying her? I left her behind 3 days ago." And I kind of like that little story. And so maybe this is what the Lovers is about. Can you travel your path in life and leave behind what's meant to be leave behind, and not carry with you what really doesn't belong in your future? And so thinking back to the Hierophant, the Hierophant can represent religion. And religion comes from a Latin verb that means to tie back together again. And so maybe what the Hierophant gets, or what the Fool gets in the Hierophant, is information about how to reconnect with your original reason for being in life, or your original purpose. And then, having been given that information, he's then, this can represent maybe the theory, but then he's sent into the world, and now he has to deal with actual people and real people in real relationships with their ups and downs, and see if he can apply and truly understand what other people are for, and what these other people in his life are going to teach him. And that's something to remember, I think, that why do we need it? Why do we have other people? Why do we need other people? And it's mainly because, well, one important reason is they teach us about us. Because other people are like mirrors for us. And I kind of like that. Thing is, can we recognize ourselves when we see our own reflection in other people? So upside down, no, you're having a problem with it. Upright, you can. And when you recognize what's going on, you become more knowledgeable about yourself, and therefore you become more capable of making good and correct decisions, no matter what it is that no matter what kind of condition or circumstance comes into your life. In older decks or other decks, this card's called the Two Paths. And so you get a young man standing at crossroads, and he's meant to choose, and there's a woman on either side. One is the mother, who represents the past and how he was brought up. And the other woman represents his wife, who represents the new life that he's meant to develop for himself. So with this card, when it appears in a reading, it can mean that you're at crossroads and you have to make a decision about what direction you're going to go in. If it's upright, relax, you're going to tend to make the right decision. If it's upside down, think carefully, because the decisions you make are going to cling to you into the future. So you better be very sure that the decisions that you make, that you really get going after what it is that you actually want. Okay, that's it, and we'll see you next time.